check, 1, 2, check.
Check, 1, 2.
Yeah. Is
bring
this
it
a
on.
Beastie Boys thing?
No, this
This
is
is
Limp
just
Bizkit.
generic.
This is Limp
generic.
Bizkit.
Every concert I've ever
The
gone
line-
to.
No, mine was Limp Bizkit.
The line between Beastie Boys and Limp Bizkit is thinner than I'd like it to be.
No, it's actually very huge because Beastie Boys don't sound like Fred Durst.
Wow.
And I can only sound like Fred Durst.
That's-
because
Also,
Fred
unfortunately,
Durst!
the Beastie Boys never worked with Wes Borland, which would have
true.
been
Yeah.
pretty rad, I think.
Yeah. So this church I used to go to on Wednesday nights in high school would host like concerts for local like bands a lot.
Oh, sure.
And
the Beastie Boys play.
No, but I was very involved in the youth group, so I would like volunteer to like help set up and like various other things.
Oh, right.
And every single band went through that routine of having the mic and being like, check, 1, 2, check. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
Oh
People
my god.
don't know how to
Welcome.
check mics. It's ridiculous.
Core memory unlock, you ready? Okay. Same situation, okay?
Check 1, 2.
And this-
Checkity 1, 2.
This dude came up. Oh, check 1, 2, checkity check 1, 2. Yeah, no, that one's bad. No, it was this guy. He came up and he's just like, all right, it's time for my mic check. Popsicles, ice, icicles, test. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Oh my god. The Rings of Saturn mic check is better than that, unironically. Because
I
the
love
Rings of
that.
Saturn mic check is meow. Meow, says the cat. Meow, says the dog. We're Rings of Saturn. We're going to play some songs for you.
Oh my
And then
god.
they just start playing their set. It was ridiculous.
That's
pretty
amazing.
iconic.
Welcome to Couchal Obsession, the only horror movie podcast hosted entirely by people who used to be quote unquote very involved in youth group.
Rings of Saturn was not very.
Rings of
No,
Saturn was
but
not
I
a youth
know
group. That was not where I
facts.
saw them.
No, I know that part.
Could I
Yeah,
tell
also
a
the-
quick story
Oh yeah, go for it.
that
Is
I
it
just
You can
youth
even
group
tell a
related?
long
Because
story.
Nina's trying to make it all about the youth
It's
groups.
not youth group related.
Damn, I was
Is it
actually really
mic
hoping
check
it would be.
related because it seems like we've
No.
got one of two themes to choose from here.
It's
Which
not
I'm really
West
interested
mic check
what-
related.
I want to know what the secret third option is.
Unrelated to anything we've talked about so far.
Okay, go off.
So, my last day at my job was last Tuesday, and one of the last things I really did at my job was there was this like photo shoot for one of our there was this photo shoot that we did that I didn't really know what it was for, but I was invited to it for some reason. And getting there, I was invited to it like the morning of. So I wasn't aware, and I went to it because I thought it was important and I was supposed to go, and everybody was dressed in like suits and very nice clothes, and then I was in like an orange t-shirt.
Oh no.
But today, not even probably like an hour ago, one of my old coworkers, who is also in the shoot, was like, "You're in the Washington Post and you're having a Mike Wazowski moment." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they sent a picture, and it's this picture that's, I'm going to post it in the Discord. It's all of these people kind of sitting and standing around a table looking at a like invention, and I'm in the background and my face is covered by somebody's arm. And
I love that.
I'm also posting the Mike Wazowski reference as well for reference. But
right.
Oh, it's incredible.
Nice.
Everyone else is so fully visible except for you.
Yeah.
Which,
That's
I
great.
mean, I was trying to largely be out of the way because I recognized I was underdressed because I didn't know and nobody told me. And so, for one, I think it's funny that I ended up in the picture anyway. And for two, my friend saying it was a Mike Wazowski moment was incredibly on the nose.
That's really
so
good.
funny.
Yeah. Nice.
Speaking of things that are incredibly on the nose, I watched a movie recently.
Yeah. What was
Was
that?
it just you that watched the movie?
It was, yeah.
Alone.
How on the
Alone.
nose?
Well, about as on the nose as Nina's question just then.
Direct.
So I watched with Nina.
Thank you.
I watched Van Helsing 2004, the one with huge jacked man in it.
I loved that
Yeah.
movie as a kid. I had it on
I-
DVD.
Me too.
Noah owns a lot of videos on DVD that I kind of like question why.
They were
Mhm.
$1.
They cost him $1. That's the reason. Yeah. That was a
I was
$1
scraping
movie.
together nickels and quarters, and I would buy a $1 movie every week as a treat to myself because there was a spark of joy in my life, and it was $1 movies.
Yep.
I wonder if my manager from that job ever thought that $1 once a week movie guy would be in his house attacked by his cat.
He didn't work
Probably.
there then.
Never, not at all. No overlap with the
He had
man.
some overlap, but not when I was doing that.
I see.
That was other people.
But we did watch Van Helsing.
We did watch Van
And you
Helsing, and let
loved
me
it.
tell you,
Let me tell you something about Van Helsing.
the first 20 minutes of Van Helsing are so good.
They're
Yeah?
like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen levels of like, this
Oh.
is fun and I'm having a good time watching it.
Okay,
So
so
League of
it's
Extraordinary
very
Gentlemen before it
stupid,
gets
but it's
bogged
just-
down in itself.
Right, yeah, it's very stupid, but it is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I remember it being.
It
But
gets
that's the first 20 minutes.
that's
Sure.
the first like while of it.
The full black and white high art intro segment with Dracula and Frankenstein.
Oh, that's so dorky. I loved that.
Everything looked so
Frankenstein.
good.
So
The set piece was gorgeous. And then we fast forward to Van Helsing tracking down Jekyll and Hyde.
oh yeah, I forgot
then-
Jekyll and
Yeah.
Hyde. Okay, so speaking of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, so Jekyll and Hyde are characters in both.
Right.
And then the actor that plays the twist villain in League is also Dracula in
oh my
Van
God,
Helsing.
no.
He's the
What?
villain in both movies. He
Hold
happens
on.
to have a very weird typecast.
I've got to find this.
I promise you, cross my heart and hope to fucking die. Okay, another thing that both these movies have in common is that both of them have have one girl characteritis. The brides are fun in Van Helsing, so I'll give them that. But there's like one girl main character, and I like Mina Harker in League. I think she's fun. I think that having her instead of her husband is hilarious. But in Van Helsing, it's the most egregious case of 2000s lead, like strong female lead I have ever seen.
Ugh.
She's insufferable. Her motivations change on a whim. She is one of the poorest written female characters I have witnessed in ages.
And her outfit
Yikes.
looks like shit.
Her outfit looks like shit. It's like sex appeal first, everything else second. But she's supposed to be strong, so like she's also just kind of the
Right.
worst.
Okay, so
we're gonna do a
wait.
misogynist Noah moment. Okay,
Uh-oh.
hear me out here.
I might.
She is so incompetent and poorly written as a character in the movie that as hot as she is not hot enough to be as incompetent in the
Right.
movie as she
No,
is.
Right,
I agree.
right.
She is not. She is very, very attractive.
Yes.
But she is
However,
not attractive enough for me to like her character in
Yeah.
spite of all the bullshit.
It's rough. They literally, you can tell they sat down and wrote one page about her fully.
Her brother
And that-
is more compelling, and he's only there for half the time. They have the same backstory, and somehow they write him way better. And it's because they see him as a person, and they see her as
Yeah. Oh, it's
an object.
Yeah,
it's
so
so
rough.
obvious. It's
It's-
disgusting.
man. But then like there's a book and a half of clearly thought out Van Helsing lore
Oh, it's so
that they
funny.
just don't talk about. Like if you were to tell me at the end of this movie that Van Helsing is supposed to be Cain from the Bible, I wouldn't even be surprised because all the stuff that they're like, oh, don't you remember fighting the Persians 1,000 years ago?
Yeah,
That he and Dracula do is just like,
I don't know if this
Stop.
is based on a comic adaptation. It feels like it is. But like 2000s movies did this thing where if there was a lot of lore behind whatever story they were telling, they just would simply not tell it. Lara Croft, the movie, did this as well. Underworld does this. Resident Evil does this. They're all like, there's a lot of shit to like uncover, but they really assume that you either know most of it or that it's cooler to not tell you most of it. So they uncover bullshit. They're like, oh my God, a werewolf has to kill Dracula. And they're like, oh, they're like, a werewolf has to kill Dracula, obviously. And it's like, oh.
That's silly
I have
of me. Why didn't I
horrific
think of
news.
that?
What is it, babe?
This is an original property that is just based on Dracula by Bram Stoker, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and The Wolfman by George Wagner.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
This is a fully original
No,
conglomeration.
Now hold
that
on
they
just a
did.
second. I'm looking at this Richard Roxburgh's
Yes,
IMDb.
The man
And
who
he
does like
was-
2 things.
Not only was he in both The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Van Helsing, which are the same movie essentially, but he did them literally fucking back to back.
Yeah. What
There
kind
was
of, how did
nothing
he get
between
that?
these for him. Did he just go from one set to the next? Like, all right, I'll just do it again now.
I'll do it again, this time with an accent.
I guess I'm Dracula in this one. Whatever. It doesn't make a difference because it's the same goddamn movie.
It's the same
Like,
fucking movie.
and this
okay,
was
let me tell
right
you.
after he was Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, no, he
Like, what the
literally was like the king of shitty like steampunk.
Yeah.
Little known king of shitty steampunk. Okay, I have one last thing I want to say about Van Helsing, and then
Okay.
I have a question for Emma. Okay. There is a final battle between Van Helsing, who has been turned into a werewolf, and Dracula, who can turn into a bat. The way that they do this, despite the fact that I know that I know that Dracula can talk in beast form. The way that they do this is while they are fighting in beast form, they will pause every few minutes to turn back into humans to have a conversation, and then they will read. And the werewolf transformation is one of the cooler parts of the movie because he's like their skin like sloughs off when they transform,
Like in Wolf
and
Cop.
it looks very painful. Yeah, no, similar to Wolf Cop. So, like, I know at least that one's very painful. Dracula's looks a little more, like, effortless, but it still
sure.
takes valuable fighting time. And they're just, every once in a while, Dracula will, like, turn into his human form and be like, we could be brothers, side by side. And Hugh Jackman on werewolves to be like, I would never join you. And then they both transform back into the thing.
What kind of anime fight shit is this?
Exactly.
Oh, it's something.
Anyway, Emma, I have a question for you about this movie.
Okay, I'll try. It's been a long time since I've watched it.
It's mostly just what do you remember about it if it's been a long time and it was like one of your favorite movies? Like, what are things
I
that
don't know
stick
that
out
I would
to
say
you?
it was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's big words you're putting
Okay,
in there.
one that you watched a lot as a kid. Because I know there are movies that I like, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, I watched constantly as
Oh,
a kid. And
absolutely.
I know there are lines that are not standout lines to me now that like were ingrained in my skull as a kid for some fucking reason. Like,
Yeah.
I could quote several to you right now, but I won't.
Yeah. So when you mentioned the Jekyll and Hyde scene, I remembered that, but I did not remember that initially. I remember
Neither did I.
I remember that Hugh Jackman plays Van Helsing.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a scene in like the basement of a cathedral towards the beginning,
Yeah,
and that's about it.
that's valid.
I remember Steampunk Frankenstein being kind of cool.
He was. I really
I
wish they
don't
would have
remember
let him.
Frankenstein at all.
I don't remember Jekyll and Hyde being in there.
It's
You
just
talk about
a
Jekyll and
little at the
Hyde being in
beginning.
there, and I'm imagining Jekyll and Hyde from The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh,
You
they
might
look-
as well
He
be.
looks exactly like him,
It's
except
functionally identical.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has like practical hide arms, and you can tell because they never bend.
Yeah.
And
And
this
then
guy
this
was
one's
all
entirely
CG.
CG.
Because
Yeah.
it's 2004 now.
They did
So-
go, like, fairly practical on Steampunk Frankenstein, though, didn't they?
They did. No, he looks
Yeah.
great. I have a little bit of beef with Steampunk Frankenstein because I am a huge fan of Frankenstein and many adaptations of it. And one thing that I love that a lot of Frankenstein for like the thing about public domain work is that fan fiction turns into like retellings that are like able to be published. So one of my favorite things that is fanon, we shall say, from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is that if the monster were given a chance to name himself, he would name himself Adam after the first human to be created.
Right.
Everyone has pretty much agreed that that is what he would name himself. In Van Helsing 2004, he is in a basement and has access to a Bible, and they still just call him the creature and it for the entire runtime that he's there. It frustrates me so much. Just literally let the man name himself.
Yeah.
Like, please.
Especially because, like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. His whole shtick is, like, feeling wronged that everyone hates him for no reason, right?
Yeah. And he will, like, quote the Bible. So, like, he's read
even
it.
quoting the Bible. So wouldn't it feel appropriate for a part of that arc being, like, for him to assert his personhood by insisting that everyone call him by a name, perhaps?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. So 2 missed opportunities are if Adam gives himself a biblical name, then we can have a conversation between character who's given himself a biblical name and character who might be a biblical angel, maybe, Van Helsing, where maybe the two of them can, like, talk about it, or maybe it, like, cracks some of Van Helsing's amnesia, but no. And then another missed opportunity is Van Helsing's whole turning into a werewolf, having to hold back the beast, kill me if I go too far thing is very compelling. I always love a kill me if I go too far, like, arc for a hero. Very good.
I think it's kind of try hard usually, but okay.
It's always try hard. It's a guilty pleasure for
Feature,
me.
not a bug.
I'm
All right.
not. I love it very, very much.
Right, we're talking about Van Helsing here. Yeah, my bad.
Right. But then we have the female lead whose brother turned into a werewolf and had to be killed by Van Helsing. And there's this constant back and forth about monsters and men and human life and all this aspect. And honestly, I think my biggest beef is it would be very, very easy to write a compelling romance between woman whose brother turned into a werewolf and had to be killed and man who's like, kill me if I turn into a werewolf. Like, why was it such a badly written romance? It's so easy. I could write that shit in my sleep, and I could roleplay that in D&D with no heads up, and they literally could not even write it into this script.
Well, I mean,
Drives me
it's
insane.
probably because the script was getting worked on at the same time as League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because somebody heard that they were making a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie and said, hey, do you think we could maybe copy off of that or something?
What if we did the same thing?
What if we just did the same thing the next year? We just,
It's the same
we wait
thing.
6 months and we put the movie out again.
We
with Hugh
take
Jackman
a
this
bunch
time.
of different Victorian stories, and then one of the same ones.
Yeah, 2 of the same ones, actually.
2 of the same. Oh yeah, because we took Jekyll and Hyde and Dracula.
And also, yeah.
And then we took 2 different ones. Frankenstein,
yeah,
who
we'll
isn't
just
there.
ignore Captain Nemo, bring in Frankenstein instead, and
So true.
And then we just go for the terrible movie. Am I glad I watched it? Yeah.
right.
I had a good
There you
time.
go.
I'm glad that I remembered that Dracula employs a bunch of gremlins in big chunky suits.
Yeah, the
Followers
Dwargy.
of mine on Twitter will know that I said I want to be a member of Dracula's Goon Squad because they have the coolest outfit, and
They're
I
like
stand by
gas
that.
mask. What Jawas? That's what they are.
They're steampunk Jawas.
Yeah.
As if Jawas weren't steampunk enough.
They're
They
close
are-
already. Yeah.
They are the steampunks, really.
Yeah. When you think about it.
They're always, when you watch fucking
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, when you're watching Lord of the Rings and the Jawas show up, they're all like, "We love the steam." Yeah, that'll be where
it's
the
gotta
theme
be-
music kicks in after I say the stupid thing.
Yahoo!
Welcome back to Casual Obsession, the horror movie podcast where we talk about horror movies. Lord of the Rings, not a horror movie.
No.
But that's just an opinion from me, your host, Noah. What about an opinion from other host, Emma?
Hi, I'm other host Emma. The ring wraiths were terrifying to me as a child, and
okay.
were literally the embodiment of evil in my imagination for much of my teen years.
That's very smart. Okay, Nina, other host, care to rebuke?
I can reinforce. I can't rebuke.
It's actually refute, not rebute. I don't know why you would say that, and I did not.
Oh, roasted. I can't believe you said that.
Your time has passed. Ceding it to Jeff,
All
other
right,
host.
you guys don't get to hear my ring race story, I
I
guess.
feel like
I
it's
wanna hear
relevant
it.
to consider the fact that Peter Jackson was mostly known for cheap horror movies before having done Lord of the Rings, and I think that shows through in a lot of aspects of it.
It really does.
Though I wouldn't call Lord of the Rings a horror movie.
Nina, ring wraith story.
Oh, okay. When I was a kid, I used to practice piano in the basement, and the basement had a television, but they only played what was being played on the upstairs television. Or it had like a channel setting that it would play from the same, like, whatever box they were watching from. It was hooked up.
Huh.
So my parents were watching Lord of the Rings upstairs, and I was supposed to be practicing piano, but you could hear when someone was practicing piano. So what I was doing was I was on the piano, and then I would like turn around and watch Lord of the Rings on the basement TV. And eventually I full stop forgot to pretend to be practicing. I was like glued to the fucking television.
Well, yeah.
And it's the scene where they're in the inn and like the ring rays are gonna like stab into the hobbits' beds, and like there's like shit going everywhere, and my parents had snuck up on me, and so the ring rays go to stab, and my parents were like, "What?" I was like, "Oh my god."
That's really funny.
Nice.
They got me good, man. I will think about that always. So the ring rays already, I was like literally like biting my nails, scared of the ring wraiths, and then they fucking got me. Because I was too young to be watching it. They didn't allow me. Like I was like, they were like, "This is too scary for little Nina."
Right.
Also, further evidence for it being a horror movie or horror adjacent. The Bilbo jump scare where he like
Oh my God, that's
snatches
so
for the
funny.
ring.
Yeah, that got me.
terrifying. And then also Galadriel being all spooky and green.
You mean hot? I mean,
True.
that was really scary to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
so many
Bilbo
scary
face
things.
was the only one that really got me. Bilbo face was bad.
Also, big
this-
spider. No, thank you.
The scene where they're hiding under the tree roots and the ring wraiths are like right there. I think that's the actual ring wraith one that like actually got me, and then everything
Like the
else was just like
worms.
carrying that forward.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like when the ring wraith just goes schneef schneef right over their head.
Yeah.
But he's congested, so he can't smell the bounty of mushrooms and carrots they have on them.
All he can smell is worms.
Farmer Maggot can smell it, but not the ring wraiths.
Farmer Maggot was really
Farming
a
those maggots,
character.
apparently.
Apparently.
Honestly, okay, one last detour before I talk about the real movie. I love how
Do we have a
in the
real movie
book,
this week?
Farmer Maggot is like an actual honest to God like character that appears for a second.
Yeah.
And he is actually really friendly, but it's also very clear that he knows that they sneak onto his property to steal his food.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very old man who knows kids are messing with him. Oh no, I'll be very polite to them. And then as they are about to leave, say, "And don't go sneaking in here anymore."
Or like pretend to be stupid and then be like, and also like,
I
can
know
you steal the
everything.
zucchini? I have way too much zucchini. Take that instead.
Everybody always has too much zucchini, maggot. You
I'm
just
not
gotta
even planning
plant
it
less
this
of
year.
it.
Me planting one zucchini plant. Oh God, I'll never recover.
Anyway, welcome to Casual Obsession. We've already said that, but welcome
I said
again.
that already.
Welcome again to
I had
the...
a segue plan saying, you know what else I'll never recover from, but then you had to say
Sorry,
welcome to Casual Obsession
the
3
horror movie
times.
podcast
That's the
where
thing
we
that
talk
you'll
about
never recover from is
Lord of the
starting
Rings.
this podcast.
So true. Many people are saying this. This
Welcome to
week
Casual
we watched,
Obsession.
Oh my God. Emma doesn't have her camera on today, so I know in my heart Emma's shitting there. God, is sitting there.
How'd you know I'm on the
Maybe that
toilet?
too. Emma's sitting there with this shit-eating grin on her face, waiting to slip that one in, waiting for me to go, okay, now I'm gonna try. Nope. Welcome to Casual Obsession. We watched The Babadook this week.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
The Babadook, everyone's favorite gay icon.
Puts the B in
It's-
LGBT.
So
The
true.
bi people aren't real.
No, you're
B
Babadook.
stands for Babadook.
Yeah. If you're bi,
I
no, you're
feel
not.
like-
You're a Babadook.
I feel like I am very Babadook coded, so that's fair.
God, Nina, real
Yeah.
people can't be Babadook coded, okay? You're just a Babadook.
That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You do have
this
the
is a
hat
movie-
even, don't you?
Noah has the hat actually.
Yeah,
Oh,
I do.
Noah's got the Babadook
I have a
hat.
very similar to the Babadook hat.
Hold on, I gotta grab it.
I like this hat, but it's definitely too steam. Oh, I get to wear the Babadook hat. Okay.
Yeah, you're the Babadook.
It doesn't fit on my head with the headphones, but it can just perch there now while I try and talk.
Perfect.
To get in front of the microphone again. So anyway, this movie is this is a movie about a
Hold on. I'm gonna interrupt you here. I need our listeners to understand this hat that Noah's wearing. The way that it perches on top of his headphones makes it look like it's even more comically large than it is, because it's already huge just to be able to fit on his giant head. And the way that it's sitting right now makes it look even bigger, and it's absurd. I wish you could all see it.
Join the Discord and
Yeah, and
you'll
see
be
the
able
picture
to.
that Nina just took of it.
Yep, here I am. See, I thought someone was going to screenshot the call, but no, Nina definitely took like a very unflattering photo of me.
You look cute.
Oh, it is just a screenshot of the call. This is fine. Anyway, the Babadook.
The Babadook.
The hat just fell.
The hat fell.
Man
The
down.
second hat has fallen.
No.
All right. This is a movie. All right. It's a movie about a woman whose husband dies in a car accident while they are on the way to the hospital to give birth to her son. And she's 7 years later, never recovers. That is our spoiler-free synopsis. Anyway, Noah, you got your ratings on that? Why, I sure do there, y'all. Thanks for asking. IMDb, we got ourselves a 6.8. Rotten Tomatoes, with our highest score in a very long time,
Uh-huh.
98%.
Hot damn.
Whoa.
I know, it's a biggie. Metacritic with an 86%,
Still
and
good.
Letterboxd with a 3.4
Not bad.
out of 5. Twitter Brandon, he didn't. It's hard for me to find any good quotes from him on this because it's all the posts I found were him retweeting prompt threads on Twitter from accounts that are no longer existent.
Oh.
So, yeah. So there's not a lot of context to why he's naming the Babadook in like a thread of 10 movies.
Well, it sure
I
is
think
one of 10 movies.
I think some of them, I'm pretty sure, was a thread of top 10 movies per year or 10 favorite movies a year, something like that, because the Babadook was on the 2014 section of a larger list.
Oh my
And
God.
that's my main takeaway.
Okay, my main takeaway is what the hell? This movie came out in 2014?
Yeah.
I
Well,
actually
that's
had a
almost
whole
10
moment.
years ago.
I had a whole moment realizing I watched this movie when it came out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember watching it when it was like fairly new, not like just out, but like still
It was
new.
Netflix new.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just forget when I started watching horror movies. I always think it was later than it actually was.
Mm-hmm. No, Big Mood. I know I didn't watch horror movies before 2012, really, but I know I really picked up after that point, and that's about all I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought for sure this
I-
movie came out in like 2016. Jesus.
Nope.
I know it's only a 2-year difference, but like still.
It's a big 2-year difference.
still
It's a
feels
big
it.
2 years.
Were you saying?
I never watched the Babadook.
Me neither. Not until now. And
I was
I
about
know
to say,
that
have you now? Because
I was
Yes.
aware of it when it came out. Like, that was not quite in the Nina Watches Horror Movies era. And it wasn't. It was a little later than the Nina Reads Horror Movie Synopsis era on, like, Wikipedia era.
right.
So it was like right in that sweet spot where I kind of knew what the vibes of the movie were, and I knew that I heard it was good. And then I did not watch it, and I just never watched it. I literally started watching horror movies the next year because when did The Visit come out?
I think The Visit was 2016.
I've-
Maybe 2017.
It was 2015 because it was my
Damn it.
freshman year, I think. I saw it with my freshman friends. Yep, 2015. So yeah, literally the next year I started actually paying attention to horror and watching
Wow.
it. So this was like right in the Nina misses it era.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it over the years.
Right. A lot of talk about it.
But yeah, I just never seen it.
Huh. Wow. I have not watched it since the first time that I watched it up until this week. So there was a lot that I didn't remember. But we can get to that when we enter the spoiler section.
I'm very excited.
So what did you all think of it?
Oh yeah. This is my first time watching it. Obviously, I really enjoyed it. It was really good. It was a better version of what I expected it to be. Because how I have heard a lot about this movie. I know what the main themes are. The main themes were riffed on in not the most recent Scream movie, but the Scream movie before that. There's a whole segment of Jenna Ortega's character talking about elevated horror, and Babadook is the example she gives. And she talks about how, like, what it's a metaphor for. So I knew all of that. And then, so in my head, the movie it is Ouija Origin of Evil, but with two characters. Like, and that's not entirely incorrect. Like, there's a lot of similarities, but this movie just does everything a lot better. And I really, really liked it. That being said, it is a fucking bummer. It's a bummer of a movie.
It's not fun. Not at all.
No. It has fun moments, but it is a constant downer, and because of that, it's an 8 and not any higher for me. It could have been higher, but I take points off for bumming me out.
That's fair,
Yeah.
I think.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
My rating was leaked, so I'll go next.
I'm sorry.
Anyone in the podcast server can see all kinds of stuff right now.
If you want to see ratings leaks,
Join our Discord server.
join the Discord server.
But I'm a 7 out of 10. It's the same rating I gave it back in 2014. It's the rating I'm sticking now. 2014 Noah didn't get it and was like, "Oh, this movie's fine." 7 out of 10. 2023 Noah, as an adult with more to lose in life, is like, "I fucking hate this movie. This was a goddamn miserable experience, and I don't like to think about it."
Yeah.
But it was well made. But because it actually made me very unhappy, it loses a couple of points.
So 7s for different reasons.
Yep, this is a 7 complimentary, should be an 8 maybe. Last time was I guess it's a 7.
Well, but you're kind of both taking points off for the fact that you were incapable of having fun while watching it. So it kind of sounds like same reasons to me.
Oh, for us, yeah. And for Noah and past Noah, different.
Yeah, I was talking
okay.
about
My
present
bad.
Noah and past Noah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Noah, who watched this this movie over the course of... It was either over the course of 2 nights on my laptop or in one go, pausing frequently because I was listening with headphones, and this movie is a little oppressive in its sound design, and I mean that in a good way. But if you're listening with both headphones in, it's a lot. So, yeah,
I could see that.
it's... I want to talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me. It's about y'all.
I think that I am gonna give it an 8 because there's something about the number 7 that feels too low, and I really do love Essie Davis's performance in this, and I feel like that deserves a really good rating. But matching the tone of the room, this movie is not a fun watch. I was not having a good time watching it, and I expect at some point in the future when I end up watching it again, I probably won't have fun then either. It's just it's like that like Hereditary thing. It's like it wrecks you the whole time, but it's so well done. You can't get away from that. So yeah, I'm saying 8.
Makes sense. I enjoyed the movie. It's the first movie in a while. I was watching it at night, and like I paused it as things were starting to get scary and like did some other stuff, and then came back, and I was like, I can either finish this now, and because I'm currently packing and I'm like going to Canada soon,
Right,
and like getting rid of a bunch of stuff. So it's like I can either finish this now so that tomorrow is solely focused on like packing and things, or I can go to bed and watch it in the morning. And it's the first horror movie in a while that I was like, I don't want to watch this at night. And that
It's a big Fear of the Dark movie, even though that's not the gimmick it's
it
trying to
doesn't
play at
lean on
all.
that at all, but it does do it actually.
I think that
Yeah.
it's, and you don't want to be alone with your thoughts after the themes in this movie kind of thing, because it really it says a lot of like one-liners without resolving them that could really stick in your head if you're not careful.
That's cool, elevated horror enjoyer. I, on the other hand, like a normal person,
No,
get
I
freaked
just-
out when I hear a noise near my chair.
I just think it's scary. I think it's like just a scary line there's a line in the movie where the kid's like, she's like, I'm not gonna die, like you don't have to worry about that, and the kid's like, is that what you thought before dad died as well? And I'm like, oh god, shit.
Yeah, cool. Existential fear. I'm afraid of the dark.
But like why? You know?
Yeah, but I enjoyed the movie. There's a lot of like little details and things that I found super interesting, and I'm excited to like talk about and potentially point out, or maybe you already know about these things. But thought it was really interesting. It was definitely creepy, and I enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it like a 8.2, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's super fair.
Yeah.
Now, we got some content warnings on this bad boy.
Yeah, this one's got some.
There's heavy grief tackled in this.
Significant.
We got there is child abuse.
There is.
Not like physical, but it's definitely a little
There is some
physical.
physical.
I just realized as I said that out loud.
Yep, yeah, it
Because
happens.
I was like, yeah, there's a, emotional, there's a neglect, there's child endangerment.
We got a dead
And-
dog.
And we got a dead
We
dog.
got a
The
dog.
dog
Got a
does not
very
make it.
dead
Killed
dog.
on screen as well.
Yeah,
it's
you
not even
actually
like
do
off
see the whole
screen, and then
thing.
you see the corpse or something. Like you watch it happen the whole time.
Yeah, just as a
Yeah.
warning.
We got some self-mutilation. She pulls out some teeth.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that part
I
was
always
so
forget about
uncomfortable.
That. Oh my god, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah,
Didn't like that
it's
part.
rough. She's incredible.
This is just a thing about me. Teeth stuff doesn't bug me like fingernail and hand stuff does.
Sure.
And I love the sound effects they use when people are getting their teeth yanked. I love those sounds. They're like so nasty and crunchy.
Horrible.
They are.
Also, man, the first part of this movie can be a little hard to watch if
First part.
you don't like kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
it was free
Oh,
birth
you mean like
control
the first
for 40 minutes
two-thirds.
straight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
It's
Like the entire
I'd say like
first hour
35
of
to
an
40
hour and a
minutes.
half movie.
There is a switch flip moment in this movie where our wonderful Sam turns into our wonderful Sam and stops being that fucking Samuel.
Yeah.
For me, at least.
Yeah.
And it's so good that you do forget about the first half of the movie by the time you end it.
Or at the very
But-
least, you understand him. And like at no point did I actually genuinely hate this child.
No,
The whole
he's-
time I'm like, he is going through it. He's like, I feel bad for both of them and
Yeah.
their circumstances, and I see how they are where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, even though he is the most annoying child, it's not because it's a bad kid actor or anything.
No,
it's
he's good.
because that's the character. The character is a child who's acting
Important.
out.
He was actually 6 years old when they
Actually
shot
6
this
years
movie.
old. Yeah.
An
What the
actual
hell?
child.
What the actual?
He did an
hell?
amazing
He's this good
job.
At 6 years old. Wow.
Yeah.
He hasn't done any other movies since. So there's a
for him.
part of me
Honestly,
that
good.
hopes that he never does
Good
another
for him,
movie
yeah.
and lets himself live and grow up to be a normal person.
Yeah, I hope I
This
never.
But I
one
would love to
and-
see him act.
This one and The Kid from The Shining are both
Hmm.
like maybe two of my top child performances in horror, like hands down. Noah does not have this noted. There is also vomit. Just as a heads up.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was at the end of the movie by then. That's 4 pages from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is that as well. Just as a heads up.
Um,
And I know that we've content warned this in the past, but like delusions and reality.
Yeah, I was
warping
about to
stuff,
say there's
just
like
as a-
sort of a loss of sanity arc running through parts of the movie that might bother. an
If you're
awful lot of
sensitive to
people.
that.
Yeah.
that's I think, and there's a lot of existential stuff. So I
geez,
would
yeah.
just say in general,
It's a tough
when we say
one.
heavy grief, I mean like if you feel like you're in a vulnerable spot and you're susceptible
watch
to
this.
messaging like that, don't watch this.
Yeah.
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 But if you feel like you can handle it,
It's good.
it's
know,
it
really
approaches
good.
I
the
will say
subjects
it-
well. Like,
I love when there are movies like this that it's like, hey, don't watch this if you're like blah 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 blah. That aren't movies like fucking Serbian film.
ugh.
Like it's
Yeah.
nice to be able to say,
Yeah.
hey, maybe don't watch this about a movie that is good and actually good. That it's like
It's just
it's
making
actually
its point
good
too
and that's
well.
why you might not want to watch it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're a little too raw to experience something that's so true to your own kind of lived experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
yeah.
But you know, earlier we mentioned that this was a very scary movie.
I have another
Right.
trigger warning.
Oh.
Erase that, Jeff. Beep beep.
Yeah, we'll cut that. We'll cut that. Yeah, it's
We-
gone. It's out.
Does
We
anyone
talked-
have any other trigger warnings?
We talked about abuse, but there's like one specific kind of abuse that I want to specifically give a shout out to in
Oh.
forced medication or like
Yeah.
forced drugs.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out to drugging your kids.
yeah.
It's rough. What, Noah?
It's just that smirk on Jeff's face because
The use of the
Yeah,
term
it's-
shout out was very funny to me. Yo,
Yeah.
shout out to my favorite kind of child abuse, drugging your kids.
in the meantime, would you like to donate to breast cancer?
Do you mean
Okay, all right.
awareness?
Anything else?
Say awareness
content
right
order-wise?
now.
Honestly, miscommunications can be pretty scary.
Anyway,
I
Evan.
am actually going to give one other trigger warning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And this is related to something I'm going to talk more about after the spoilers or in the spoiler section. But the Man in the Hat is a very common sleep paralysis demon phenomenon
Oh,
that
yep.
a lot
yeah.
of
The
people
Hat Man.
experience.
Yeah.
Everyone loves the Benadryl Hat Man.
And this is
Yummy.
definitely a homage to that story, I think. And it's very similar in vibes. So if you have experiences with that, or if it just freaks you out, just
Yeah, watch out
know
for that.
that that's a thing in this.
You know what's really scary is jumping the gun 3 times, and it just makes me think, what other things are scary?
Great segue, Noah.
Well, thank you. Since you think it's so great, are there things you think are scary, Emma?
Yeah, so I think this movie is actually pretty creepy. I think, like people have said, it's kind of an emotional slog to get through, and it's a bit hard to watch for a variety of reasons. But I think discomfort while watching a movie doesn't necessarily equate to scary.
True.
But the scary level of this movie, and when it does have its scares, it is really creepy. And I was creeped out the couple times that it really does kind of like pull everything out. So I'm gonna give it like a 6 or a 7.
Ooh.
Which is like the highest I've given in quite a while.
Yeah, I was about to
so,
say
yeah.
that's the highest in
Nice.
recent memory for sure.
This is
Yeah,
you.
I
And
think-
I fully feel it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go into the spoiler discussion on the topic of scary rating, I know that this movie has some detractors, and I do want to put it out there to those detractors. I think that if you don't buy into this movie, I can see why you would think it's maybe like not as deep or more gimmicky than
Oh, for
Like-
the entire last 10 years, I swear, at least once a week seen somebody posting somewhere about how they think The Babadook is incredibly overrated and a bad and
Yeah.
stupid movie. I've seen
And
tons
I-
of people say this.
I'm gonna be 100% honest. Well, I don't agree with that, and I think that this movie does what like things like Insidious and Ouija and a lot of other movies that think they're doing something like this. This movie is actually doing it, and I think I like how straightforward and yet like accurate its representation of its metaphor is, I can totally understand why someone would be like, this is a silly way to do this metaphor, and I don't buy it. So if you're out there, you're listening to this, and that was your take on this movie, I get it. I disagree, but I get it.
I feel like half of the time people are putting arguments together that are like that well thought out and maybe expressed that eloquently. Literally the entire other half, they're all just like, the kid was so annoying, I didn't get what happened at the end. And that's like the extent of
and
their
then it's
analysis.
like, you're
it's like,
invalid,
you just weren't watching the
actually.
movie right, dude. This is your problem,
You need to-
actually.
You can actually buy into, that's like a whole like horror discussion to have.
You can buy
but
into
like
things.
you can buy into things, and I would argue that it's not cool to be cynical and not buy into movies that are trying to like
Absolutely.
open their arms to you and invite you into their space, and you're like, actually, I'm too cool to engage with you.
I mean, especially a movie like this, which wears its themes like on its face,
Oh,
and is
Jesus,
just like,
yeah.
hey, this is a movie about grief and
Yeah.
how it affects you and your family and those around
Yeah.
you.
The movie has like
I
made
thought it was pretty ridiculous that the Babadook had grief tattooed on his forehead.
Oh my fucking god!
It was honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. And when he came
Babadoker?
into the room and kicked the door down and said, "I'm not going to talk about my feelings,"
No. Yeah, it's like the it is almost that overt though, actually, because the movie has made its thesis statement really plainly, like 5 different times before the horror movie actually starts.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that this is Scream made fun of this as being the beginning of the elevated horror train. But I really feel like the unfortunate part about the way some elevated horror stuff went is this made its statement and then followed through with it, while some other elevated stuff is actually just confusing.
Sometimes elevated horror will say, this is my theme. Okay, I did my theme. Time to just be a fun, doofy horror movie. And it's like, no, you actually have to like follow through. You actually have to like write a coherent like narrative to support your theme. You can't just
Yeah, this
like Insidious being like, this is about child abuse and trauma, and then it's
And it's like, but what if the goat-hoofed red lipstick man was actually the devil?
I can't wait for the red door. Anyway, let's do our
It's,
Spoiler section
God, I just-
after Jeff.
I hate the term elevated horror.
oh, you're so
And it's
valid.
because
No,
of
yeah,
exactly
I
this
agree.
discussion that we're having here, where it's like people think that it's done differently than any other kind of horror movie. Well, no, it's just a slow burn with a point
Yeah.
that it's making. That's not
Anything
a different
can-
genre of horror movie. That's just
All of horror
a
can have
slow-paced
themes.
horror
Yeah.
movie.
Hereditary and Black Coat's Daughter.
Everything has
Both can
themes.
fall under
Everything has
elevated.
stuff.
Yeah.
Everything
Because,
is saying something.
you know,
like
Yeah.
It's just whether or not you're saying it well.
Yeah.
And both Nightmare 3 and The Babadook are saying something and say it well, despite one of them being a slow burn and the
Yeah.
other being Nightmare
Exactly.
3.
Welcome to Primetime Bitch. Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
this is a discussion that happened on Twitter recently about people categorizing horror based on preconceived stereotypes of storytelling, because someone was like, here's some cozy horror, and it was just like more feminine. There were female main characters, there was more like slower scenarios and settings and stuff versus like slashers, which are masculine horror.
I
or
would like
whatever.
to put a pin in this
Mm-hmm.
because we could have an entire podcast discussing the cozy horror thing.
Okay.
And
You're so true. That's so
soft
correct.
punk or whatever the fuck they decided to go off on.
Yeah,
with
I've
this
got no
shit.
idea what all
and
of
it
that
actually
is.
actively heavily pissed me off.
Okay,
And
I don't want
I
to
would
get
like
you
to talk
going.
about this movie
Okay.
now
Yeah,
because
maybe we have a
Okay,
discussion
that's
about
so
that
fair.
at a later time or something.
I would love to,
'Cause-
but like as an aside here, I'm just gonna get wound up and not be able to talk about it.
Sure.
And I would like to talk about the Babadook a little
Yeah,
bit.
I know
yeah,
nothing
no,
about
that's why we're
that whole
here.
discussion. To me, Friday the 13th is cozy horror. Like, that's just, you pop it on and you're having a good time. Is that not what cozy horror is?
Let's not get into
Author's
it.
note:
Okay.
Jeff means Friday the 13th Part 3 and not Part 1.
I mean every Friday the 13th movie. They're just all good time movies for me. I can cut
Anyway,
this, though, since
Babadook
we're not
spoiler.
having that discussion.
Babadook spoiler.
Babadook spoilers.
We open up with a car wreck. It's big, it's messy, and as the car wreck reaches its like conclusion of headlights coming at you kind of thing, suddenly our main character is dropped into bed. It was a nightmare. It was almost 7 full years ago. I believe we're within like 3 days of the 7-year anniversary of her husband's death in this nasty accident. And her son wakes her up. It's time to go to school. It's time to do this, that, and the other thing. And he had a nightmare. So she goes, she checks under his bed. She checks in the closet. She reads him another goodnight story. And this, it would seem, has been their pattern for the last week or so. Neither of them are sleeping well, and they're both getting more irritable because of it. He ends up acting up at school, causing her to not be able to work, like her full day at work because she has to go take him out because he brought a weapon to school, because he's going to go kill the monster that's after him. They are not, as a family, having a good time. And that night, after having a large argument with the people at the school, where she ends up pulling him from school because she's going to go try and take him somewhere else that they're actually going to care more about him, because they just kind of want to put him in isolation and have a single person teaching him. The book that he decides to have her read to him that night is called Mr. Babadook. And Mr. Babadook is a pop-up book, but it's the world's scariest and simultaneously coolest pop-up book.
Yeah.
About Mr. Babadook, and you'll know when he's coming because on the door you hear ba 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 dook dook dook, and he wants you to let him in. Obviously, the kid who is already afraid of everything is not having a good time at the pop-up book of the Babadook looming over a child in bed. He's like, Mom, what happens? Does he get the kid? What happens? Is he going to hurt him? And it, hard cuts to him screaming and crying while she tries to read him a different bedtime story that is a normal bedtime story. Over the next few days, it's really just not going great for them. They hang out with Amelia's sister and her child, and they kind of fight a little bit. It's not really going great. Sam climbs to the top of a swing set and falls off and hurts himself because, of course, that's kind of what happens. And this is just it's really not helping Amelia. And she starts telling everyone that he was sick and that's why she was late for work. That's why she's late to meet people. This, that, the other thing, which, what they say about lying. Liars go to hell, Revelation 21:8, we all know.
It does say that, yeah. Speaking of youth group from the opening of the episode here.
It's called a callback. God, what a stupid-ass song that they used to sing. Anyway,
yeah.
Fuck, sorry. Derailed myself. Sam is convinced that the Babadook is a real physical person who is in their house trying to scare him. And this is making everyone uncomfortable because, yeah, all kids have imaginary friends and are afraid of imaginary monsters. However, as Amelia says to the doctor that she ends up finally taking him to, she's like, yeah, but not like this. This is way worse than normal. I don't know what's happening. Can you please give him drugs so that he stops talking about this? Can you please sedate my child? While she waits for him to get recommended to a psychiatrist because, things take time and she's not in a fit state to have jumped onto this one sooner, Now, unfortunately for Amelia and her denial of the Babadook, she starts to see him too.
Dun, dun, dun.
He's skittering around in the corners. The Mr. Babadook book that she tucked away is now out in the open again. Except now there's more sections to the book where it shows her killing her pet and killing her child and then eventually killing herself because that's what the Babadook do. So she doesn't like that. She tears the book up. She burns the book.
That'll show.
Tries to report it to the police, but how are you going to report to the police? Hey, I burned up this book that was definitely sent to me by a stalker. But the book was real, I promise. The police are not really receptive to this one.
Yeah, they don't.
So
they
she
don't
ends up
laugh
going
her
back
out
home.
Of there, but they really don't take her very seriously.
Initially, they even do laugh at her.
A little bit.
Two of the more immature dudes in the back. But they go home, and Sam, the child, he's really not feeling it. He's not having a good time because now he's worried about his mom. They've had a few conversations where he's like, I really don't like this medicine. It's making me sick. And she is in a bad state and not feeding him. So, medicine on an empty stomach thing. He's having a bad time. She's having a bad time. She hallucinates a whole bunch of cockroaches coming out from behind her fridge. So she ends up throwing all their food away because she thinks it's contaminated. Child services comes in, and it's a really tense moment. Tension is high, and no one's getting any sort of relief from this. And finally, the Babadook cometh, and he ends up possessing our main character. Amelia is now just bad guy Amelia. She goes, she kills the dog. She is ready to threaten her son up until the neighbor comes over. And then she tries, instead of threatening her son outright, she tries to sneakily get him down into the basement where the Babadook is hiding. But, and now here's where some people I think might get some mistakes going in here or confusion. Because the Babadook is probably not literally living in the basement. I think it's more of a symbolic in the basement kind of situation.
Because that's where she keeps all of her husband's stuff.
Right.
Well, specifically in the sense of Sam stabs her in the leg to get away from her and then goes into the basement. Whoa. And I can see some people being like, well, that's where the Babadook said to bring the boy here to me. I don't think that's quite the thing.
Is she trying to get him into the basement, or is that just where he runs to because that's where he set his traps for the monster?
No, that's what I'm saying is because when she was in the basement and she met her husband.
Oh, right. I forgot about that scene. My bad. Yeah.
Which I also should have mentioned, the Babadook appears to her as an apparition of her dead husband.
Yeah, and then
saying to bring him the boy.
Yeah, and then it makes her watch him die again.
Mm-hmm. Which is super cool of it to do.
Yeah, his head gets cut in half. Cleft in twain, as it were.
As it were.
But these Looney Tunes booby traps that Sam set up earlier work out, and he manages to subdue his mom enough to tie her down and make a heartfelt plea to her, and ends up purging her of the Babadook. There's the vomit moment,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as it is written in the book of the Babadook, you can't get rid of the Babadook.
Ah, damn.
And kid gets yoinked all the way back up the stairs. She goes up there and says, nah, you can't have my kid. I'll kill you if you try and touch my kid again. And they have this huge confrontation moment. We flash forward a couple of days, and they seem to be doing a whole lot better because they have directly addressed their grief and now locked it in the basement and said, you can stay there now. We acknowledge you, but you can live in the basement.
And we'll feed you worms.
And they're having a birthday party on Sam's actual birthday for the first time in 7 years. Which
he is 7 years old.
The child service workers are a little confused at that one, but don't worry. Sam very blatantly says, my dad died on the way to the hospital for them to have me.
Yeah.
So I haven't had my birthday on my real birthday. This was not the cleanest spoiler section I've done. I apologize about that. I feel a little rambly. I always feel rambly if I don't have these things written out in front of me.
So
it's fine. We'll fill the spaces in.
Nina wasn't even here.
I went to the bathroom. I could hear the whole thing in the bathroom.
But anyway, here we are. It's the Babadook.
Okay.
Now, wait, the spoiler section, Emma wanted to talk about something specific.
Okay. Well, Emma might...
I'm back.
Emma? Oh, good. Thank God.
Do you remember what thing it was?
I don't believe you said what it was.
Was it to do with a specific trigger warning?
I believe it was.
I kind of went ahead and talked about everything relating to that, but the man in a hat is a common sleep paralysis phenomena that people will see, and there are kind of stories about it from all over. And my family has a personal man in the hat story that's really creepy that I won't share on the podcast because it's actually really personal and fucked up.
Yikes.
Mm-hmm. That's super valid.
Terrible.
Yeah, but it's creepy, and it was weird to kind of watch the movie and be like, oh, this is literally kind of pulling from that mythology. I don't know that that's the right word, but that story and the obvious kind of
Mm-hmm.
hints and homages to it in the Babadook's design.
Okay, so
yes.
It's real creepy.
So here's the thing about that is I have been able to find an awful lot of specific references of things that inspired the design of the Babadook himself. And there's no mention of that. There's just a lot of talk about old black and white horror movies, silent movies, and stuff like that. Specifically,
they show during this one, yeah.
Yeah, specifically a character named the Man in the Beaver Hat in a movie called London After Midnight from 1927.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's a lot of like old black and white and silent movies like shown and referenced in this movie. They do a little Dr. Caligari moment at one point, even.
Yeah.
But which actually led to me writing the best note that I've ever written. It just says the kebabinet of Dr. Caligari. Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
But part of the original idea, because of all that stuff, part of the original idea for this movie actually involved doing it in black and white. That was Jennifer Kent's original idea for how to do this, and she wanted to do it in, I think, more of like a very like old-timey kind of look, because she really likes the well, I mean, like the Dr. Caligari style, like old-timey German like expressionism style, where a lot of things can be very like heightened, very exaggerated, just for the sake of expressing the thing that you're trying to express. And I understand why they didn't go for that, but I would love to see that version of this movie.
I love a film that wears its inspirations on its sleeve the way that this one does.
It's so obvious about it too. Yeah, I love it.
And one thing that I love about that is that, like, so with the Hat Man in mind, even if that weren't intentional, I like that because sedatives are a theme in this.
Right, it's definitely still in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so a big beef that listeners may remember I had with Sinister was that the creature they decided to have be the antagonist did not fit with the themes of the movie, nor was it well designed when it came to basically anything about it. This is like one of those where, looking at the Babadook as it has become a pop culture icon, you may be led to believe that this is a similar situation where they just kind of made a silly little guy. But if you take into account the expressionism, the storyline of Dr. Caligari being like, you know what I mean. Jeff knows what I mean. But the storyline of Dr. Caligari involving like taking over sleepwalkers and that kind of like being forced to commit murders and that kind of thing being worked into the Babadook as a character. Back when we watched Skinamarink, I remembered people comparing Skinamarink to the Babadook, and I was like, in what way? Because as far as I knew, the Babadook was a very straightforward kind of possession haunting movie, which it is.
Fairly.
With the themes that it has. But then we get to the scene where the Babadook is asking Amelia to bring him the boy. And there's a distortion on his voice. And I was immediately rocketed back in. And then some of the scenes where she's like sleeping and she is, like it's sleep paralysis vibes. She is lying there and it's that same like loss of control and dread as we're seeing weird shit like around. So I get it. I think obviously Skinamarink is more experimental.
It's doing
and
its thing
less
way more than it's doing this. Yeah, but
right. But I liked the scene. It did the things that I liked that Skinamarink did, which was like the weird like entity trying to imitate humanity, slowly losing its grip on what humanity actually sounds like, which is very fun to me. It's just a horror gimmick.
That's very fun.
But yeah. Since we did the spoiler synopsis, just really quick, I'd like to break down the grief metaphor before we get any further.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So this is gonna kind of read like another synopsis of the movie.
That's fine.
Basically, grief works in a very specific way. There are certain dates that you can be more sensitive towards, like when they come up, and it can manifest in how you react with other people, even in ways you don't mean to. And this movie does a really great way of showing that. There's the way she interacts with her kid. She doesn't mean to treat him like he's the reason her husband died, but it's very clear that he has absorbed that in the way that he talks. Twice in the movie, he tells the story of his birth, and the first time he's very disconnected, and you can tell that he blames himself. And then the second time, there is acceptance there, and you can tell that this is just a fact of who he is and how he was born. Yeah. But it's affecting her work life. It's affecting how as the date of her husband's death comes around, people are not inadvertently, but they're reminding her. And she's like, why are you reminding me? I have moved on. I don't even mention him anymore, which
It's not what moving
one of
on
the
actually is.
that's
for the
not
record.
yeah, exactly. That's not how grief works. Just ignoring it will not help, which is another like part of this like Babadook thing, is that to kind of live with it, you do have to let it in, and you have to the book is very upfront about the fact that like he can be a friend to you, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That's like the early on, before there's any of the scary stuff,
Yeah.
there's this promise that eventually the scary stuff will be over. And even when you know that, it's hard to deal with that. But my favorite parts are the fact that it gets worse around the date of, the fact that all of this ramps up as we get closer to the date it actually happens, the fact that when you are getting closer to that date, it feels like you can feel like you are reliving that moment, which she does like 2 or 3 times during this movie.
Yeah.
Once, most obviously, when the Babadook basically makes her watch it. Grief can like force you to observe these things. And then my second favorite thing that happens is when she's in her possessed by the Babadook moment. Is it her husband's mom that lives next door?
I think she's just
I got
a
the-
I
neighbor.
just thought it was the neighbor.
I'm pretty sure she's
Okay,
just a
the way
neighbor.
that she talked about her husband
I just assumed that they'd
was
lived there a while.
super
Yeah.
familiar. Okay,
I mean, they've lived there over 7 years now, just for the kid. I took it to be that they've lived there
okay.
the whole
since
time.
it was also the husband's house
Yeah.
area stuff.
Yeah, that was kind of
Right.
the impression I got.
But when she comes up and is like in the middle of this Babadook possession moment, she is reached out with genuine concern, and in a way that like everyone else is reaching out feels exasperated, feels frustrated, feels like when are we are worried about you, but it's starting to affect us, which is super valid of them as well. Like, I'm not going to say that they aren't valid for even cutting her off if she's refusing to deal with grief the way that they have to, because their kids are getting hurt because she refuses to deal with it. But when someone who she's been shutting out finally gets through to her in a genuine way, the Babadook possession hits pause. You can find breakthrough to start to find that relief, and relief doesn't come just like in one expulsion. It's a lot of small steps. And you can tell that by the end of the movie, I'm really glad they didn't end it before where they ended it. I'm glad that they showed this like new section where she's putting in genuine effort. I loved the scene where he's like, "Hey, can I come down?" And she's like, "No, you go wait outside. I will tell you about this when you're older. I will tell you about grief and what I experienced by your father dying. I won't take it out on you anymore, but I'm also not going to burden you with it. You can join me in this experience of going down to the basement with my husband's things on the day he died and taking a second to just bawl my fucking eyes out and then getting my shit together
When you can handle it.
when you can handle it." And I really, really like that. Emma had me watch a show called Shrinking on Apple TV.
Let's go.
And there's multiple characters going through grief. We have a character who has Alzheimer's who's grieving the functionality of his body. We have a
He
character
has Parkinson's, not Alzheimer's.
Oh,
Yikes.
Parkinson's, my bad. He has Parkinson's. We have a character whose mother died, and her father, whose wife obviously died. And the character with Parkinson's gives the others like his like way that he deals with his grief, which is to put on a really sad song, wallow in it, just absolutely wallow in it for that duration of that song, and then be done for that day. Let yourself grieve, let yourself really stew in it and feel all of those emotions and not push them down, but like take control of it. And honestly, that feels like what this character is doing at the end of Babadook. And I thought that was really cool. But yeah, that's about it for my like Nina's grief synopsis TM.
I feel like a lot of what this movie is saying can be summed up pretty briefly just in 2 specific moments from the movie, right? It's the feeding at the worms, which is just emphasizing the fact that grief is a thing that you have to feel kind of actively. You know, you can't just like let it happen to you. You have to sort of be intentional with it if you're going to actually get through it. And also just this one line that the neighbor says at one point where she is talking to Samuel about her Parkinson's that she has. And she says, "He wanted to know, so we talked about it."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how about that? How about that?
How about the
I-
idea
the-
that kids can take it actually
Well,
sometimes?
they have to.
If you
They have to. If the
Yeah.
thing has happened, you cannot try and shield them from it because it has happened. There's no way around the fact that the kid's dad is dead. Not talking to him about it is only going to make him feel like it's his fault. And no matter
He's
what you tell
noticed,
him
he
from
does
there,
know.
you've given him
You
the
have to
impression that
discuss
you're
it.
blaming him.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, by not talking to him about it, she's leaving him with that as his only assumption that he can make, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by just being honest with him, just talking to him about it as though it is a thing that happened to the both of them, the way that it is the way that you approach that. It's kind of like
Yeah.
we talked about
Yeah.
a bit on the Shining episode. Like, kids just have a better idea of what's going on than you think they do. You can't ignore that. You can't act as
No.
though they can just move
And I-
through the world and not perceive it.
I think a lot of adults ignore it because
It's inconvenient.
it's
It's hard for them.
inconvenient, and also like the kid may have noticed something or have thoughts on something like that make you feel like you just want to be in denial. As long as you don't have the kid say to your face, I feel like you're blaming me for dad dying, then you can pretend that the kid doesn't know that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, you can pretend all of that, because that's something that I know is a problem with me and my parents, is that like the moment that they know, they have told me they know that they fucked up in some aspects. The moment that I, the child, acknowledge that they fucked up, they don't want to talk about it all of a sudden. They get defensive. It's like, I would like to talk about this. We both know that this happened. You're the only one who doesn't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as we don't talk about it, you can pretend that I don't know.
Yeah. And that doesn't
And that's
change
kind of how I
anything,
feel
actually,
it is.
But
No, actually, it just makes it worse. Just like in this movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of makes all further discussion of the movie feel pointless, honestly. Now that we've got all that out, it's like, what else is there
I want
now?
to talk about the masturbation scene.
Yeah, actually, it's an
sure.
important
Let's
scene.
talk about the
legitimately.
masturbation scene.
Yeah.
I think, and I was noting this a lot when I was watching like the earlier parts of the movie last night, of a lot of the signs of kind of depression that the movie was like subtly pointing towards. Subtly and not so subtly.
Right, yeah.
But I thought it was interesting that they included a masturbation scene because back in ye olden days, when women had mania, is what it
Hysteria.
was like officially called. Basically, doctors would just give them like dildos, and they're like,
Like, work it out.
masturbate it out.
Masturbate about it and maybe
Yeah.
you'll feel better.
Yeah, maybe this will help out.
And so I just thought it was really interesting that in a movie that is very much kind of like a metaphor for like struggles with grief and depression and things, they explicitly have kind of like this scene of the main character masturbating. And I was like, huh, how about that?
I feel
I
like
thought that was interesting too.
I feel like it's a really important scene. Like, fully unironically, I'm not making a joke here. I think that's one of the
Oh,
more
no.
important scenes in the movie, actually. Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
number one, it's kind of really driving home the whole, like, you know, she really doesn't have a moment for herself thing that the movie spends an entire hour of its runtime establishing for us. But also, like, a big part of the reason that I think this movie doesn't hit for a lot of people is because a lot of the people who watch horror movies are dudes, and dudes do not know how hard it is to be a mom.
Yeah,
Because when
and this
you
movie
look-
really is about that.
Right, this movie is about the difficulties of single motherhood more so than it is about anything other than grief, actually, right? Like, and the way that it shows the difficulty of it, number one, Essie Davis's performance here is, once again, I'm saying incredible, because she shows the balance of her love for this kid versus her frustration with him so fucking well.
Very,
Oh my
very well.
God.
It makes the kid more tolerable by
Yeah,
comparison.
Because you can see she really does love him. She's not just putting up with him because he's there. She cares. She really does. It's just that she also can't sleep a wink at night, and she doesn't have a moment for herself. And how do you live under those conditions? And that, I think, because there's a certain amount of the movie's energy that it puts toward telling us about her loneliness, her readiness to try and move on, maybe acquire herself another partner. She's got this guy at work that she's kind of like flirting with a little bit and stuff, and it seems like he's into her as well. And it shows that like she really wants to be able to just go for it and do something, but she can't. And she's also got the like, you know, the physical loneliness. It's not just that she's horny and doesn't have time to crank it. It's that she's actually she's got the loneliness on multiple levels. And that just happens to be one that you can sort of alleviate by yourself if you have 2 minutes for it. But she doesn't even have 2 minutes for it. I feel like that scene really hammers those points home really, really well.
That one does. And then another scene that really stuck out to me is when she does get 2 minutes alone to herself and she goes out and quote unquote does what we would practicing practicing self-care.
Yeah.
But like when you are, and I've been in like this, it's survival mode. You are in survival mode. Practicing self-care feels more like just glazing over.
Yeah.
You don't feel actually relaxed, rested. You don't feel like you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
You go through the motions of doing whatever it is that used to make you happy. And it really just draws attention to the fact that you're not happy.
Yeah, and I love the way that scene is played. The way she's like, she, like you just said, it's just glazing over. She's just sitting there. She's going through the motions of going and getting herself a little treat, getting her ice cream and stuff, and it shows her
It's
just
so
sitting.
sad.
Yeah, the way that it shows her
It
just
was the
sitting
most
alone on her
heartbreaking
bench,
scene.
and she's just in this like big ass. It looks like she's in a mall or something.
Like a
And it's just
mall?
this empty
Yeah, a
white
world of
wall that she's
beige.
sitting in front of, and she's just sitting alone on this empty white bench, just kind of looking around at the world around her as though it's all strange and unfamiliar to her. And then she
That
goes
was
home
the
to her
scene-
black house.
That
Oh
was
my
the scene that
God.
broke me. That was the one that fucking broke me.
Right.
Cause like I have been there and I'm happier now. And in that moment I was just like, I just want this woman to be happy.
Yeah, you just
I
want
just
her to be
want
able to
her
have
to be
her
okay.
second, have her ice cream and enjoy it too. Like, Jesus Christ.
That's why the end of the movie is like, though this is a downer movie and it takes away from my like overall like rating, that's another reason I'm just so happy the movie ends where they decided to end it, by letting her be happy, by letting her start to heal and us see that it's like a genuine healing and happiness.
Yeah.
That's so fucking important.
Yeah.
I like when I was watching, I was expecting the coworker to play a bigger role in the movie than he did.
I thought he'd come back again.
And I'm glad he didn't.
Kinda, yeah.
Because that would be the classic, like, oh, the man steps in and saves the day or whatever. Which I really don't think is needed, especially in themes kind of about grief, as we talked about in single motherhood and like all this other stuff. It's nice from like an ancillary point of view to be like, when you're thinking of the story of these two in a broader context, oh, maybe like down the line, now that she's being a little more emotionally healthy, like if she does get into a relationship, maybe there's that guy and like he was kind of there for them, and maybe that's something she can pursue further down the line. But I'm glad, like in the context of the movie, that didn't happen. Additionally, I would like to talk about something I never talk about with movies, and that's sounds. And Noah, I know you have thoughts about sounds as well in this movie.
I love the sounds in this movie.
It really stood out to me at the end, or towards the end, where she's in the bedroom, and for one, like her and her son are on the bed, and the bed is kind of getting like thrown around and like rocking. And there was like no sound there, or like no music or anything hyping it up. It was just the sounds of the bed rocking, and it made it feel like more like it was just a real thing. And that was creepy. And I specifically had the thought while that was happening, because at first my brain was like, this is weird that I'm just hearing this noise. Because in any other horror movie, there'd be like a lot of like build up and like musical tension and all of this stuff happening. And then additionally, when she is facing the darkness and her husband steps out and is talking to her, and then his head gets like slashed in half, And then she's just kind of like wailing. Another thing happens where it quickly like shows the darkness again, and the husband's body just like quickly gets pulled back into the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's very fast. There's no music or anything. And again, I was like, if this happened in another horror movie, that would be played for a scare. But in this, it
like
felt
a violin scream happening.
Yeah.
Where it would just
in
be
this,
like
it felt
loud.
much more kind of like in a play, where if you have a character that like falls or something and they just kind of crawl like off stage so that they're not like a distraction to the stage. It just felt very much like the body being removed from, so it's not a distraction of kind of the grief that's in the scene. And the fact that they didn't play any like sharp violin or anything to make you like jump or get scared, that the body was suddenly like taken back, I thought was really interesting and cool. I thought the moments that they chose to have music, and more importantly, when not to have music, I thought were really well done.
Yeah, it's like one of its strengths is that it's not afraid to feel a little anticlimactic every now and then.
I was actually going to mention that.
Yeah.
The fucking almost comedic effect of every time she puts the book out of sight, the music stops.
Yeah.
I actually was about to mention that. Like,
I love that.
Because
the use of
again,
music in this movie is so intentional.
something
and then the cutting,
brief, out of sight, out of mind with the music in the book.
Yeah.
That's great.
I wasn't going to say anything like that. I just liked the music and the way it's used. Because there's like very little music in this movie. There's a lot of soundscape work, but there's only a couple of times when songs are featured, and almost without fail, they are chopped. They do not reach a good conclusion.
Yeah.
They are there to punctuate that this is a scene that is not going to end the way that you think it is. And it's just kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so there's a moment when Amelia wakes up because she hears a distorted voice saying there's someone in the house.
Yeah.
And we, of course, are worried
Right.
because we're like, is this like, why did she hear that? Is this like the Babadook? Is this a Sixth Sense thing where she's like, someone's in my house? But she just happened to overhear Sam down on the phone with the neighbor saying that there's someone in the house, they think, and they want to come over and spend the night over there, blah, 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 which is something she specifically told him not to do. You know, do not call anyone. Don't tell anyone that we're not doing well. We're doing fine, that kind of thing, you know? And no, so that scene has some great stuff going on too, because there's a lot of whispered voices echoing around. But there's the scene when the wardrobe falls down and you are led to believe that it fell on the child.
Yeah.
And instead he's under the bed. There is a sound that sounds like Sam saying "mum" being played in the background on a loop that you can just hear, "Mum, mum, mum." But it's like kind of like fuzzy and it's a little echoey. And then, because I was like, well, maybe it just sounds like that. But then over the next like 2 minutes, the music is made of a lot of chopped up vocal bits.
Oh, I didn't even catch this.
In this like, it's finally I got music thing.
Yeah, you caught me on a week that I'm actually woefully unprepared. So
no, so I
That's
loved
really cool.
that section.
I wonder if on the repeat they ran it through like a tape delay or something like that. So as you hear it, you're hearing it like degrade with every playing.
I don't know that so much
No?
because he doesn't. I don't think he actually says anything.
Right.
I think it's just in the soundtrack.
No. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying like in the making
okay.
of the soundtrack, I wonder if they did that by running a tape delay.
Maybe.
So then like every time you hear it, the signal has like degraded a little bit. I'm not thinking that because I think
possible.
it maybe sounded like that because as previously mentioned, I didn't hear this. I didn't notice. But
I just
I
know
think
that
that's
all the
cool. I
sounds
think it's a
sound
cool
fucked
thing.
up and discordant.
Yeah.
Once extra voices get layered in there.
Right.
And it's very fun. And I am a fan of when people actually use music to show poor mental health in a decent way rather than just, it's, you could tell they're fucked up because Limp Bizkit's playing in their bedroom. No, but
This is a call out for Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
Burzum.
Yeah, so the music in this movie is composed by Jed Kurzel, I think is how it's pronounced. And this is actually the same guy who did some music for an episode of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, and also
I need to watch that.
2019's Overlord, which we covered previously on this podcast.
I do love Overlord.
I miss Overlord. I haven't thought about that movie in forever.
I cannot manage to find out what episode of
That movie probably shouldn't be the kind of movie that elicits warm fuzzies when I remember it exists, but it does. I just really like Overlord.
It's not. I feel like we all thought it was better than it actually was.
I like Overlord.
The only people
I've seen it twice,
but I feel like we all liked it better than it deserved.
No, the only people who I've seen that really hated it are people who are like, actually, black people weren't in the regular army. They were in black people
I
army.
remember we
boy.
read the reviews, and the only
Yeah.
bad reviews were people being
Yeah,
racist.
it's neutral positive on all fronts except for racists who are like, my World War II movie about Nazi zombies isn't historically accurate.
No, I want my Nazi zombie movies to be historically accurate. Anyways, the Babadook.
Oh, I didn't realize that the guy who played... Sorry, speaking of Overlord, I am now realizing that one of the guys in Overlord is also the guy who plays Louis in the new Interview with the Vampire. The vampire who gets interviewed is Louis.
Oh my god,
Fun
he's
fact.
Brad Pitt? I didn't even know there was a new Interview with the Vampire coming out. Did I miss that?
Yeah, no, it's a TV show, and
okay.
they changed a lot of things for the better, like making it more explicitly gay. Because in the book and in the original movie, Lestat and Louis don't kiss. And in this one, they kiss a lot.
It definitely feels in the movie, just from the way Tom Cruise acts, it definitely feels like they do, but like it's not shown.
Right, but this one they're a lot more openly gay. Lestat is more openly romantically jealous of Louis getting with other men.
Good.
Louis is openly like, you're a European white man who is bisexual, and I am an explicitly gay man of color in Louisiana. Our experiences are not the same, you piece of shit. So yeah, all in all, it looked really good from everything I saw. I haven't watched the whole thing, but it's fun. Anyway, and one of the actors is in Overlord 2018.
Well, how about that?
Babadook is hard to talk about without being upset, so I'm glad we're talking about Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah, so that's our best cozy horror recommendation is Overlord.
Totally cozy.
Yeah, it's cozy as hell. It's almost as
It's
cozy
a-
as Friday
it's
the 13th
a-
Part 3.
Oh my god. Yeah. Or my favorite cozy horror rec, Annihilation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, though,
Like
I watch it every day,
though.
like 100%.
Back to
Back to
Babadook.
Babadook.
Please, yes. Back to Babadook, Mr. Duke.
I'm curious
Don't
if you
call him
had
that.
this same thought, Nina, but
Okay.
considering how much the Babadook has existed in internet culture, I was surprised by how little the Babadook physically was in the
He's
movie.
not in much.
There's like 2 parts, 3 parts.
So the Babadook is gay joke originated from Netflix accidentally putting the movie Babadook in their Pride list when they they have their sections where they're like, for you, and then they had a
LGBT.
get hype for Pride,
Yeah.
LGBT movies, and the Babadook was under it. So I knew that the Babadook being a gay icon was entirely arbitrary, and there was literally nothing in the movie to support it. And I also knew that every single art piece I've seen of the Babadook that is part of this gay parody joke is always of his pop-up book form. So in my heart of hearts, I knew that you don't see this motherfucker. Because if you saw him even for a frame, that's what people would be drawing, but it's always the pop-up book version. So I kind of didn't expect to see him very much.
You do see him for a frame, though. There's a lot of stills of this man.
There are.
Yeah.
But they're not the type of thing that you can characterize or
It's not as fun.
or
Nina
No.
blatantly ignoring the face I posted in chat.
he's not Pennywise.
No.
Yeah, no,
is the
he-
thing.
He's not a guy
He's
doing
a little
things, really,
fucking
in the
freak.
same way.
He is just a little fucking freak. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's not a guy doing things. So I guess
He's got the Lady D fingers, though.
he does have
I
the
feel
Lady
like people
D
don't
fingers.
talk about that.
He does.
Well, now we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Yep, there we
It's
go.
out. It's out. I kind of feel
Babadook
like
and
those
Lady
are,
D when?
I feel like those are intended to be like a little bit of a Freddy Krueger reference, don't you?
There's a lot
little
of
bit.
things.
Like, because there's so
Also,
many references to
freaky
so
long fingers are not
many
cool.
things. It just feels like
Well, because there's more themes of like sleeplessness, which is a big
Right,
like
exactly.
nightmare thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can totally see that. And taking drugs to sleep and or whatever.
right.
So
and,
I do
and
I
leaning
do
into
feel it.
the sleep paralysis monster aspect of it, and
Yeah, I definitely can. And like the scenes of her falling into her bed.
I like those.
Also, I really
They're
like
a little bit
those.
hokey, but I like them.
There's a couple things that are hokey in this movie. Two things. The falling into bed scene is super hokey. No, three things.
I love
Falling
the
into
falling
bed
into
scenes
bed
are hokey. Kid falling out of the treehouse has been hokey
That's been
hokey
done a
joked
good
on many
bit, yeah.
times. And then the scene where her husband's head gets chopped in half. Why is that what they went with for the imagery? I think that's actually kind
Yeah,
of
that
funny.
Honestly,
I was like, it from a car crash.
Literally same.
Right.
I was like, I saw the lights coming and I was like, okay, so in Bly Manor, there's a character who haunts someone and was also run over by a car, and their haunting visage is like the like headlights reflected in their glasses, so you
Right.
can't see their eyes anymore.
That is cooler.
And that's kind of like my gold standard for car crash dead axes.
Thanks for the glowing eyes there, Mike. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. We always love your glowing eyes.
Love it. Love it.
But yeah, the whole head getting sliced in half a la Ghost Ship was not really what I was expecting. And it did kind of take the wind out of my sails a little bit.
I will concede that one is not executed as well as it could have been, but I kind of like how unreal it looks.
That's true.
Because that suits
It is
the
like
scene, doesn't it? It's supposed to be sort of
Yeah.
a weird, like, kind of liminal's the wrong word, but like sort of it's in a space that's
Surreal?
not a space. Yeah, it's surreal. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, it's got that like surreal kind
I
of
feel
tone
that.
to it, and I feel like for something to be. It would have been so fucked up for it to be like jarringly realistic, right? For it to for his death to be getting portrayed in a grittier way. It could have been a way more fucked up scene, but I like the fact that it doesn't feel like it's an actual thing. I like that it almost doesn't hit. I feel like there's something about that kind of like makes that scene right in a way that it might not have been otherwise. Maybe this is just me being always too happy to let things be the way that they are so frequently, but I don't know. There's something about that I like.
I feel like it takes a little too much effort for me to explain it away into something that I'm happy with, but I can accept it as like she doesn't actually remember the moment of, so it's just like the worst thing that she can imagine having happened
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Because like it's exactly like the Ghost Ship comparison is relevant because
Right, yeah.
that can't happen.
Right.
What happens in Ghost Ship can't happen. But we love to imagine it happening. That's why the scene exists.
Right. It's
So
cool. It's neat.
because our brains are gross and weird and do that kind of thing. So to kind of be like, yeah, that's not how he died, but in my head, like that would be a really terrible way to watch my spouse die. So
Right.
like that's what I see. Is an interesting way to do it. So, and I also feel like it would be much harder to portray the actual thing.
Most definitely.
obviously.
Most definitely, yeah.
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 I want to shout out the creepy moment in the movie,
Okay.
or the creepiest moment in the movie, where the Babadook does like kind of physically manifest, and we get the best look of them.
Yeah.
When main character is in bed at night, and then the door like slightly opens, and then you just see this figure kind of like shuffle into the corner of the room. For one, terrifying. That was really creepy. And then also as it just kind of crawls up onto the ceiling over her, and it's like so many frames are kind of like taken
Yeah.
out of the movement.
Yeah, they make it look all
Mhm.
herky-jerky, like the black and white stuff. Yeah.
it's so cool and creepy, and I liked it
It's
a lot.
very cool. I love the way that when they show him, he alternates between moving very slowly and really quickly. So he's not only ever moving the one specific way. You know, it's not like the guy from Insidious, who's like almost never actually moving, but always out of breath when you see him.
Yeah.
I like this an awful lot better than that. Also, the way that I love the way that the look of the Babadook is. Most of the times that you see him, he may as well just be a pile of clothes. And they lean
I
into
love
this,
that.
like they
Yeah.
turn the light on and there's just the clothes on the mannequin in the corner there, and it's like, oh, I see how this pops into your brain in the dark. That's so simple. And then you combine that just with like the aesthetics from all the old black and white movies that Amelia's always watching, and it's like, well, oh, all right. If this is just a monster that the kid dreamed up, it's so easy to see where this idea came from. But then they also have all the deeper stuff. It's so good. It's so cool.
I love that when they quote unquote start to defeat him, his clothes just start falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's like he's just running around here naked. That's nothing but respect for my streaker gay icon.
So true, so true.
But yeah, no, I also love how, cause that's like when me and my brother were little, we used to like, share a room with bunk beds every once in a while. And we weren't, we both had rooms with bunk beds. I usually slept with my little sister. And then he would be alone in a room with two bunk beds, cause we didn't know, what the gender of the next baby was going to be. So they bought bunk beds no matter what, and they were like, we'll figure out this out later. But every once in a while, my brother and I'd be like, we're going to have a sleepover. And my parents were like, fine, like what could possibly go wrong? And I'll tell you what went wrong. It was us staying up all night telling each other ghost stories about the man in the corner of the room, TM. And it's like, if you have clothes on a chair, if you have clothes hanging up, like it's really easy to like
an
see
open
faces in
closet
the dark.
or anything, yeah.
Which is another like Skinamarink adjacent
Absolutely.
thing. But I love how that extends into the daytime for this specific story. I love when she goes to the police officer, like the police department, and there's someone's fucking coat hanging up on the wall with the hat, and she's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
The Babadook is also here. Grief follows me wherever I go. Yeah, no, I loved that. I loved just like the Babadook's fucking hat being at the police department.
Yeah.
Like, why would it be there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like you don't support the thin Babadook line that's keeping society intact.
Oh my god.
Babadook is a cop, actually.
Nothing but respect for my Babadook.
A cab assigned cop at Babadook.
I hate it here. Anyway,
Do we want to know his
Let's
notes?
know his notes.
let's note these
Let's
Noah's
note
notes.
these leaked notes.
I'm gonna note them.
that people have already
on.
seen.
No, they only saw through the like
They
some of
only
the early trigger
saw
warnings.
the trigger warning of the worst fucking kid for the first 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. So the
Noah
actual
says-
notes aren't.
Noah says, "Can't wait to see if I still enjoy this the next time around." Boop boop boo. A lot of this is just talking about the kid
Yeah, sure.
being annoying. Noah says, "I love
said
the
he's a menace, actually.
Menace. A
Noah
menace to
says-
society.
I love the Babadook book so much. I also love the Babadook book.
Babadook.
It really treads that line between scary book and children's book that you would actually find on a shelf
Absolutely.
pretty decently. Especially with how it starts. Like a lot of times when there's a creepy book in these movies, it's like, why would you read this to a kid? But the book starts with like, maybe you will find a friend,
Yeah.
Mr. Babadook. And then it starts to slowly get creepy.
Yeah.
And she stops reading it out loud when she sees how creepy it's getting.
Right. She
But
does
it's
it right.
too late at that
actually.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She thinks that
No,
it's just a normal goth kids book.
It
Yeah.
does remind me, both the Babadook's facial appearance and the art style in the Babadook book remind me of Gerard Way of My Chemical
Oh,
Romance.
majorly, yeah.
Yeah.
Love you, Gerard, if you're out there listening right now. Noah says,
Just on the off chance Gerard Way's listening to this podcast. Hi.
I wish they
Hey,
were.
Gerard.
I wish they would. Noah says, I feel so bad for her. I can't imagine. This is sad. Are you okay with me reading this one? It's long
the
and
tone
sad.
of the episode, I think.
I can skip it.
It's about how I would rather fucking die than deal with what she was dealing with. That's the summary of the
Honestly,
movie.
Yeah, I wanted
mood,
to read it because Noah notes that the kid is clearly neurodivergent, which I think is something that,
definitely
like, in this
intentional
movie kind of gets passed over as, like, oh, he's just like his father. Well, guess what? Maybe his father was also neurodivergent.
I think that's what the movie's getting at with all those lines, right? They wouldn't say that so
a lot of the
many
people
otherwise.
a lot of the people who knew the dad comment on how he spoke his mind a lot and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's hard enough to do on your own, but if you're like the neurotypical person in a couple that like have a genetic thing like autism that gets passed on the father's side, and you're the one without it, you could like your understanding of your husband, who's an adult who has coping mechanisms and could have possibly taught those coping mechanisms to your kid.
Yeah, or at least...
But now he's gone.
Yeah.
And you already would have to deal with a kid, but now you have to deal with a kid you can't understand. Yeah. That's really rough.
And that makes me wish almost that they'd been more explicit about the kid being neurodivergent, because then I feel like that plays into the specifics of the grief of losing a spouse when you're a parent, right? Because it's like
they don't
there was
really
all of this
explicitly
that we were getting into together, and now I have to tackle all of your shit by myself in addition to mine. You know, like I feel like that makes the theme bigger. Almost.
I feel like it's really well implied, personally.
Right, it is.
I feel like she never has to look at the camera and say, I can't believe I'm doing this without you.
I wish it wasn't possible to watch the movie and not think about it.
And miss it.
You know?
100%, yeah. Noah says, that's the end of the internet. So true, Amelia. When he has fucking poppers and she's like, where'd you fucking get those? And he's like, you got them for me on the internet. And she's like, my bad. Noah says, Claire's kid is worse than Sam, honestly. She's a normal kid who's actually the worst, and I'm not going to say she deserved to get pushed out of the treehouse, but seeing as she just got a bloody nose, I'm going to say all's well that ends well.
No, honestly, like in that moment, when that kid is tormenting Sam, saying you don't have a dad because even your dad doesn't want you type shit, and it's like, you know what, no.
She's way worse than he is for that.
But here's the thing. I love that because it goes back to what we were saying about kids noticing things even if you never talk to them about it directly. Yep. Because she is picking up what Claire is saying or not saying or implying, and she's repeating that. If you have a sit down and chat with your kid, then so that they actually understand why you're saying what you're saying, maybe they won't get themselves into situations like that and repeat some really hurtful shit that is, really hurtful.
Yeah, just like in Krampus, actually, which came out the same year.
Just like in Krampus.
I thought Krampus was 2015.
Well, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, I was right.
2015.
Shit, now I sound like an idiot like 4 times in this episode. God damn it.
Loser.
Oh, no.
Noah says, when she gets the Babadook book back the second time and it's got the explicit stuff about her killing this shit, she says, okay, but like the fact that to make the Babadook book work, she would have to be like pulling the tabs and shit is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Obviously, I feel like this scene,
she's there like, oh no, what will happen? Pulling on the little tabs and making
and,
little
like,
paper her go, ah.
I think at that point it's implied that it's like supernatural book bullshit, especially in a couple of the scenes where like there's sharp movements that don't feel like they're programmed into like they aren't the way the paper would move. But I love the mental image of her like physically pulling the pull tabs to make her kill the fucking shit in the fucking book. Oh my god. Noah says... Noah says the messing with your perception of when she's awake or not is great. Having Sam come up sleepwalking, but it's actually her that's asleep. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like it's talking about Nightmare and Freddy Krueger and everything. That's another good example of like, I feel like there are definitely like nods to it because there are similarities. Yeah. Noah says the Babadook rolling up on a fucking dolly is so funny, but I'm still sitting here shitting myself. He does like move like they put him on like a fucking hoverboard.
Oh yeah, he just like he rolls forward and you're waiting.
He's wearing heels.
Another moment where the movie lets you down and it works for it. where he comes up and you're expecting a huge jump, and then his fingers just go click
Yeah,
and
he's just
open
like,
up a little bit. And it's not an adrenaline dumping rush. So the
No.
tension doesn't go away.
But it does get you. You're still just like,
Yeah. Noah says the fucking flip of how I feel about this kid from the front end to the end here. He's such a good actor, honestly. The moments where he's caring and nice are so strong. It's just that he just plays a really annoying kid.
I said that he's either ass at acting as an annoying kid, or he's good enough at being an annoying kid.
Okay, it was hard for me to interpret that. I think he played a really good annoying kid. As someone who's run a daycare, that's what annoying kids act like.
Jesus,
And
yeah.
I felt myself getting stressed at the beginning because part of the reason that I don't want kids is like I love interacting with good kids, but interacting with kids like that is really stressful for me because there's literally no guarantee that they'll ever stop. You can do everything right, and sometimes a kid just needs resources that you don't know what they are. You can try a bunch of different stuff and not get through to them. It's the same with adults, but with kids it's especially hard. And that stresses me out. There were days where I just could not get a kid to calm down. I was trying literally everything, and I almost cried with relief when their parent came to get them. So
jeez.
So you're worried you'd get a bad one.
I'm worried that I would create a bad one and not know how to fix it.
And you would know the whole time that
And
it was
so-
your fault.
Exactly. And so I will simply not have a child.
Yeah, easier that way. On the subject of the kid being a good actor, they actually were looking for a slightly older kid at first. They were talking to like 8 or 9-year-old kids, and they kept finding in all of their auditions that they didn't act. I think the phrase that they used,
Annoying
no,
enough.
The phrase was that they used in this description here is that they weren't like, they didn't come across innocent enough. They came across too knowing was the word that they used. And then they got like an audition tape. They decided to maybe try a younger kid, and they got a tape from this kid, and they were like, yo, that's pretty neat. And they sift through a bunch of tapes from other like 6 and 7-year-old kids, and this was just the one who did the best.
That makes sense. I feel like 6-year-olds are the point. Like a lot of 6-year-olds that I've interacted with, because my daycare was like old enough to be away from their parents for a couple hours up to 4 years old. And I have babysat kids who are like 6 to 12. And the 6-year-olds are the ones where they're old enough to understand you, but young enough that they still take you seriously.
Yeah.
And they are also old enough to say the darndest fucking things, which is my favorite age. That's the kid that like just says the darndest fucking things at work. He is 6, going on 7. So this is exactly the Babadook kid's age. And so watching this kid and hearing the shit that he was saying, I was like, yeah, this is how 6-year-olds are.
Yeah,
They understand more than you think.
definitely. It's almost like that's
And they
the
have a lot
movie or
more to say than
something.
you think. Yeah. 100%. And Noah, that brings me to Noah's last note, which I think falls in with this theme. He says, I love that they've managed to get past the worst of it, but they're still being just a bit off to the child service people. I broke her nose in 2 places. Yeah, man, that's a great thing to tell them. Smooth.
Yeah.
A kid can be a little bit fucked up and not need to be taken away from his mom. The
Yeah.
fact, like,
Kids say the darndest
God,
things.
they sure
they do be saying shit. Anyway, that was the Babadook. Do we know what we're watching next time?
We do. We decided it at the same time that we decided on doing the Babadook. I just gotta scroll up and see what it was.
Thank God Jeff remembers, because I did not.
Wasn't
haven't-
it Chucky?
Oh,
It was
it
Child's Play,
Chucky.
yeah.
Happy Pride. We're watching
Child's
We're
Play.
watching
Child's Play.
Child's Play. Gender
It's
fluid.
it's Pride in July.
Pride in July. Yeah.
just keeping it
well, I'm
going.
looking forward to that. I'm looking
It's just
forward
like March
to
of the
that.
Zombies.
Exactly. This is what we do. We stretch things out.
You know, we're getting past Gay Pride. We're getting into Gay Wrath Month, and that's where Chucky comes in.
Exactly.
Actually,
Yeah.
so true.
I'm looking forward to it. Until then, I've been Nina. You can find me at Nina Wolverina on Twitter and also on Tumblr at Nina Wolverina with a 3 where the E is. I'm not super active on Twitter for the rest of the month. I'll be more active in July. I have a book coming out, so if you want to know about that, I will be posting all of the like info you need to know if you want to decide to buy the book or not, starting in July. Other than that, other people are here, and you can find them.
Noah, you can find me as Bubbadabad, Bubbadabad, Twitch, Twitter, Insta, Letterboxd. If you didn't get my rating for this movie spoiled by Nina posting it in the server,
I'm sorry.
you can get it spoiled by following me on Letterboxd, where you will see it a full week at least before the episode comes out.
And I'm Jeff. You can find me on Twitter at BubbleWubbadab, on Tumblr at What Is It You Pray For, and on Letterboxd at The Fakest Fan.
And I'm Emma, also known as Emma Panada. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Emma Panada. I'm also writing a TTRPG called All the Witches. You can find information about that at allthewitches_ on twitter.com. And I hope you had a great time. Thanks all so much for listening and hanging out with us. We really appreciate you. We'll see you next time for Child's Play. Goodbye.
Goodbye.